You're listening to The Big Lift, the podcast of Web Trends Optimize, the CRO solution that enables marketers and developers to maximize the ROI on their digital properties. Web Trends Optimize is a powerful, feature-rich and easy-to-use solution, all delivered within a fixed-price contract with no additional cost for increased functionality ever. During these podcasts, we meet some of the key influencers within the marketing and conversion world to understand their roles and examine their challenges. Towards the end of last year, I spoke with Jonny Longden, co-founder and director of agency Journey Further. Now, some 9 months later, I catch up with him to discuss how CRO has become more mainstream during COVID and about the upcoming challenges around the greatest sales period ahead. So Jonny, on our last podcast, that was probably about 6-7 months ago, I think something like that, we discussed many things, including the effects of COVID on the online business. But the expected steep decline in online sales as a percentage of retail after the lockdown does not, well, at least for now, seem to have materialised. I know whilst the UK figures are showing a 2% reduction from 2020, the figures are still 4% higher than they were pre-COVID. Now, I suppose some 9 months later and the pandemic at least abating somewhat, do you feel that online businesses now need to concentrate more on profit than they do on turnover?
Yeah, I think, from speculating point of view, what's happened is, people think, well, everybody's in lockdown, so, they're going to buy things online, but as soon as it's over, they'll go back to the shops. But I don't think that's true at all. I think basically you've got whole swathes of people who had never really tried buying things online or never really felt that comfortable with it, who suddenly then had to do it, who were forced to do it, and realized how easy it was, and then suddenly got into it and do it all the more. So you've basically just got like whole new sort of sections of the market suddenly online and sort of regularly buying things online, and I don't think that's going to change. Like a lot of people, it takes doing it to realize how easy it is. A really, really good example, just personal example. Like I never ever buy clothes in physical stores. In fact, there's very, very little that I ever buy in a physical store. But lots of people are like, oh my gosh, don't you need to try the clothes on and stuff? And it's like, well, no. So what I personally do, I just buy loads of stuff off ASOS, like absolutely loads of stuff. It all comes and gets dropped off my doorstep. Try it all on, like I send 70% of it back and it gets collected from my doorstep. It's so easy. And you tell people that and they're like, oh right, I didn't realize you could do that. And so it's like that sort of stuff. People have done that and gone, actually this is way easier than I thought it was.
I think I've got a bit of a story there. My wife was very much a retail physical shopper, really enjoyed shopping. Online came along and she does exactly what you do, but she has this perception that if she sends something back, so she buys at least 2 sizes of a single item, then she'll go and take one of those back if it doesn't fit, perhaps even both, send them back. But then she thinks, oh, actually, I've now got another £100 in my purse because I've sent something back. I'll go and buy something else. And then she buys another 2 items. So I think we're going to have to move house to a house with more wardrobe space fairly shortly, because we've got 7 bedrooms and I won't say every bedroom, but we're certainly getting the wardrobes filled up little by little over the years that we've been here. So yes, she's just seamlessly moved from being a physical shopper to being an online shopper, but now enjoys the best of both by being able to go in and try stuff on and even bring it back and then send it back.
There's also shopping for clothes in shops is hideous, right? And it's always really hot in the changing rooms, and you get really stressed, and then you just end up thinking I'm just gonna buy something because I'm not gonna go home without nothing, and then you buy anything, and then you don't really like it, and so it's just all a really inefficient sort of process. And things like electronics, like if you go into like Comet, or does that still exist? I don't know which ones.
I don't think it does.
But those places, and then you want, I don't know, like an alarm clock. Then there's a shelf with like 3 on, and you don't know anything about them. You don't know whether they're any good. You just look at them and go, that one looks good. Whereas online, you get to see reviews, you get to see what other people thought of it, and all that kind of stuff. So it's just, there's so much about shopping online that is just way more efficient and effective. And people realize that. But back to your actual question, I think businesses should always focus on profit, and rarely do.
Yeah.
So a lot of the business we start working with, they sort of, really want to work with us because they want to increase the conversion rates and they want to increase sales. But hardly anybody ever thinks about increasing profitability. And so you kind of ask questions around, which are your most profitable product lines, or, what is your strategy for profit? And although there probably is one, it's rarely kind of articulated in a way or trickled down to a layer within businesses that can be articulated and communicated well. So
It's rarely front and center anymore, is it? From an online perspective, anyway. It's all about acquisition, I think.
yeah, no, and it's a great example actually. So we've got a client who are an e-commerce retailer, but they manufacture their own products and sell them themselves online on their own website, but also through various different other third-party retailers. And they've sort of strangely they've created different brand names for all of these different products, so they kind of dissociate themselves as a company from their products via these different brand names. And the reason their website exists is because it has a huge cost per acquisition benefit over third-party retail, because obviously they're massively discounting when they're wholesaling to the likes of Amazon
Yeah.
and Argos and all those kind of people. So the website really exists because it has a better cost per acquisition than those third parties. But then if you just look at sort of how marketing's working and stuff like that, it's sort of really sort of generic in the sense of they might be running PPC and doing return on ad spend and things like that. But when you really think about that strategy of trying to effectively steal share from third party retailers, then you think, well, actually, there's got to be other things that are more important. So share of search over those third-party retailers, basically being more prominent in search results than those third-party retailers, is far more important than just pulling in traffic at a good return on ad spend. Return on ad spend doesn't deliver against the profit strategy. The other thing does. So, and all across the board, like the way you measure what you do and the way you improve what you do should speak to a core sort of business and profit strategy, and rarely does. Again, similarly, like just improving conversion, great, but actually there's a huge benefit there in that, like if they can capture somebody's interest and then educate them about the rest of the product line, then again they're not having to spend to acquire customers, and they're generating awareness of them as a brand and the different products that they've got over and above that just all going through third parties. So there's all that kind of thing where you have to really think about, like, what are you actually doing and how does it ladder back up to profit strategy. But back to your actual question, I don't think that really has anything. I don't think that really is any different pre-COVID, post-COVID. I think all businesses should do that and should focus on that. I think what is different post-COVID is that a lot of businesses have woken up to the fact that digital is the future and it should be a really fundamental part of their business, and particularly businesses that have had a combination of different channels. So, they might have had physical retail and digital. And that's really kind of what we're seeing in terms of the industry that supports digital, that you've just got a huge amount more investment going into digital. I mean, it's crazy because digital is a sort of a weird word now. Like,
Yep.
what isn't digital? But you kind of get what I mean. And so there's a lot of investment going into the digital side of the business. There's a lot of recruitment happening. It's very hard to find candidates. There's a lot of extra business being put into agencies like our agency and things like that. So, it's definitely got a huge focus that will not go away just because COVID's gone away now. And I think that is because effectively the customer market has changed.
But do you think that the traditional bricks and mortar businesses, who have now gone online as well as everybody else, have a greater focus on profitability, because that's been the core of their business, where there's a lot of startup businesses which seem to be hung up on grabbing acquisition and turnover? And obviously you need to do that to be able to build a business. But I feel that there are lots of people who are forsaking profitability for the sake of turnover.
Yeah, I mean, from my personal experience, I rarely see businesses focusing on profitability in a way that actually trickles down into what they're actually doing from an operational point of view and an execution point of view. So, like I say, everybody wants to increase the volume of traffic to their website. They want to increase their turnover, and just at a concrete level, like we're a performance marketing agency. We do PPC, SEO, and I run the conversion division. It's way harder to persuade people to focus on the conversion of the website and the front end of the website versus driving traffic through increasing PPC spend or other forms of marketing. So I think you do generally have this drive to sort of invest in increasing volume without necessarily thinking about the profitability. In actual fact, conversion optimization, experimentation on a website, or just anything really that you're doing to your website to improve the throughput of it, is by its nature has better profitability than traffic driving. Because if you want to increase the traffic that comes to a website by spending more on paid advertising, then as you increase that traffic, you completely proportionally increase the cost of it.
Absolutely.
And plus, you get into the law of diminishing returns. So, like, the more you spend and the wider audiences you go out to target, the less relevant those audiences are and the less responsive they'll be.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, you're increasing the cost but diminishing the returns, and also completely proportionally increasing the cost. If you improve your website, so you could do something to your website that has, a significant increase in the conversion rate, and it will have cost you some money in some shape or form, but you do not have to proportionally increase all the associated costs of e-commerce to do that. You don't have to increase the cost of hosting or
Yep.
of your platform or of a whole load of other stuff, your internal people who work on it and all that kind of stuff. As with media, you're literally just increasing the percentage spend in order to do that. You're not doing that when you focus on your website. So it is inherently and by its very nature just a more profitable endeavor.
I think acquisition, when you get somebody new on board, the acquisition cost squeezes the margin significantly. Whereas the whole idea is once you get them on board is to then nurture them into becoming regular spenders, and spending more and things like that, where I think a lot of people see where conversion rate optimization comes into play. But a lot of companies see CRO, or experimentation, if you'd like to call it, can only be justified by consistent, ongoing, successful experimentation. And that has to deliver incremental value or a greater ROI, I suppose. We both know that CRO is much more than that. But how do you convince potential clients in the value of testing?
Yeah, so this is a really kind of hot topic for me at the moment. In a way, it's quite complicated and a bit challenging, but I think the worst case scenario is that people view the value of experimentation as winning tests, right? And that we're all sort of guilty of it. Like that's the easiest way to sell it. And you go and say, we can deliver this, and like you can maybe project like the kind of number of winning tests that you've got and the value of them. And similarly, when you actually do it, then it's really easy to report on the value like that. So you might work with a client for 6 months and say, these are the winning tests and this is the annualized value of them. And it's dead easy to do that, and it also generally will be a pretty strong message because we don't have a single client where we haven't been able to, after like 6 months, turn around and show huge ROI in terms of that way of reporting.
Yep.
But the problem is that it's a very short-sighted. Well, it's a short-sighted way of viewing the value, and there's a whole load of other value that you completely ignore by doing that. But also, it creates the wrong perception of what it is that you're actually trying to do and how it works and how it should work. Because like what ends up happening is that like clients will sort of want more, and they're like, where's the winning tests, and where's
Yes.
and then you in turn as a consultant or an agency or whatever will be sort of panicking and trying to sort of chase winning tests, and it completely is the wrong way to look at it. Because for me, the actual value, I mean, the most important part of the value is that it's basically like really, really valuable R&D that drives innovation. And it's completely irrelevant, really, in a way, whether a test wins or loses or even does nothing, because what you're actually doing when you do that is you're buying really valuable research and development data, and that should tell you something really important about how you can maybe sort of change the way your business works, and so you ignore that by sort of focusing on winning tests and thinking of it as a sort of a tactical commercial endeavor to generate value. And it's hard to get out of, but like, if I guess, like, on the worst side of it, what I'm talking about, like, people go, right, well, I'm doing PPC and that's costing me this and I'm getting back this, and I'm doing some display advertising and that's costing this and getting back this, and so they just think of it the same way. It's like, if we spend some money on CRO to try and increase our conversion rate, then what will we get back, and how does it compare to those channels?
But it's interesting, just going back a second, that's still talking about turnover as opposed to profitability. And I
Yeah.
think we as CRO people should be talking more about profitability, because once you've got your client on board, then you need to sell them more. And the only way to do that is to use different methods and testing different methods to get conversions happening more frequently.
Yeah, although in a way, I'm not sure, like, and as hard as it is, I'm not sure we should talk about revenue at all. And that's kind of the point I'm making. That is that, I don't know. Let's like give you an example. So we have a e-commerce retail client, the fashion retailer, and we've run various different experiments, which initially just started out as a sort of a test idea like any other. It was like a fairly whimsical test idea. We thought, what happens if we change product images on their category pages, which are just literally images of clothes,
Mm-hmm.
to images where they're being modelled,
Yeah.
and that proved very, very successful. And so there's various other tests that we've done along the same theme of, like, if you put humans and models in various shots around different places where they're showing product, will it improve conversion? Now it does. And so I could calculate the annualized value of those tests, but the fact is that's research and data that will fundamentally change their view of how their customers respond to different types of marketing collateral and to how their brand, because the choice to put just the product on its own was bound up with a lot of decisions about brand and how and their proposition and who they are and things like that. So that research and that data, which is what it is, it's really, really valuable customer research that helps make really sort of make bigger decisions about the brand and about how they should display themselves and things like that. And every test should do something similar like that. Like, another really good example of a retailer that we work with who sell beds and mattresses. They sell both products that they have in stock themselves, which they've obtained from wholesalers and got in stock in a warehouse, and then they also sell products that you just order direct from the wholesaler.
Mm-hmm.
And the in-stock products take 2 to 3 days to deliver, and the other ones take around 6 to 8 weeks. And everything that we do that is related to those in-stock products. So if we limit people's choices to just products that are in stock, or we give them the option to just go and view products that are in stock, it absolutely really, really increases the conversion rate. And so, we now have this much broader hypothesis of, like, people are really only interested in stock products. So then you have this much bigger question of, well, should you even stock those other products? And should you maybe just like completely pivot the business so that you can then, you're only selling in stock products, and you can make this big brand message about how that you've fast delivery, fast turnaround beds, all that sort of stuff. And that's a big strategic decision, and there's a lot of moving parts in it in terms of, what would that do to SEO, what would the payoff be, and all that kind of stuff. And that, for me, is what experimentation should be doing. Experimentation should be originating and then supporting very big strategic things that are happening, and shifts in the way the business runs. And in that sense, it is really sort of fuel of innovation. And that's a very, very different thing from thinking about it as something that just directly drives revenue or even directly drives profit, which it kind of does, but you're sort of missing the trick if that's how you think about it. Because what you then find is, lots of businesses, they'll have a roadmap of stuff and they'll be doing all this big kind of interesting stuff, and then they'll do some experimentation which they see as sort of just playing around with front
Hmm.
end elements on the site. And you've completely missed a trick, because actually experimentation can fuel these much bigger things that you do. But at the end of the day, that's really quite intangible to put a revenue value about. But then businesses would not necessarily go and ask for like ROI from research that we buy. And I have a really concrete example of a business that we work with who were really sort of hard on the negotiations around the fee, and like we reduced our fee, and all the time we're like asking for like where's the benefit, what's the ROI, can you prove the ROI? And we can, but it's a hard sort of slog of just continually trying to sort of demonstrate revenue value and like how it's calculated and all this kind of stuff. At the same time, as we were, or not long after we won that contract, the very same business approached me and said, I'm not sure what kind of services you have in your agency, but we've got this RFP. And it was £150,000 RFP for some customer research that they were putting out to various different agencies. Now, there was nothing in the RFP about trying to demonstrate the ROI of it. And like, how could you demonstrate ROI from a piece of customer research?
Yeah.
And yet they're doing it. So you've got that same business like worrying constantly about whether CRO is delivering ROI, and then going out and spending £150,000 on a customer survey without really worrying about the ROI of it. And actually, experimentation is a better form of research. When you go and ask people what they want, they'll tell you one thing, and it's not necessarily got anything to do with how they would actually behave.
Yeah.
Experimentation is real data about how people really behave, about how customers really behave in a binary situation, and that tells you something very, very valuable at how they would really behave. And you can get much more innovation out of that data than you can out of a piece of customer research. But it's just that fact that you simply can calculate the revenue value of an experiment that means that that's what everybody wants to do. And it's because you can do it, then it becomes the focal point of everything. And it's like that's what makes people think it's a revenue generating thing.
But I think people are also looking for a signal of job done well, and they take a risk with putting CRO in often, and they want to be able to show that actually that choice of doing that has proved profitable. So I think in the digital world, we've kind of grown up in the digital world that everything has to have a return on investment. Whereas in traditional marketing, when you had a billboard that was hanging outside Harrods or whatever it might be, you couldn't really tell whether that was having an effect on the bottom line. Whereas now, we've got much more detailed matrix that we can actually pull out all sorts of different data to be able to substantiate our suggestions and claims. So I think it's probably that everybody is thinking, well, because I can, I want to, and because I want to, I can then show my boss that actually I'm doing a good job because I'm winning brownie points. But it was an interesting comment you made a couple of minutes ago, where you were talking about selling in-stock products. Because I feel that over the next 3 months, we're in this perfect storm. The perfect storm is, A, that the dependencies upon third-party cookies are going away. Secondly, that we've got stock issues because obviously the number of HTV drivers is vastly reduced because of COVID. And we've also got the I suppose the Brexit and the cross-channel importation of goods, etc., etc. And we've got Christmas coming up, and people are more akin to buying online. So I think this perfect storm is a place which is really going to challenge people. So do you think this is the time for retailers to stop discounting?
Well, discounting's a really sort of strange and difficult thing to understand the impact of it. Really, like and it's almost impossible to completely A/B test, as it were, because you can't really control for it. Like you can't control everything about putting discounts out there. But it's like with like Black Friday. you got to wonder how many people who buy something on Black Friday would have bought it anyway. And even though you've bunched a load of sales up into a short space of time by having Black Friday, and therefore it looks like there's a big spike in sales, if it didn't exist, would they have just bought it anyway?
Yeah.
At full price? Because I mean, there are people who will just go and see what deals there are on Black Friday and buy things that they probably don't really want. But you think maybe they think they didn't want it, but maybe they would have just come round to buying that anyway. And then there are absolutely a huge amount of people who are like, well, I was going to buy a TV, but I'll just hang on a couple of weeks until Black Friday and see what deals
Mhm.
there are. In which case, you've literally just given somebody a discount for no real reason because they would have bought it anyway. So, yeah, and my point about that is like how the hell could you A/B test not having Black Friday? Impossible, right? So, but with any sort of discounting like that, it's very hard to understand what the incrementality of providing the discount is, and it's not absolutely not a given. Like we've done tests for retailers where we've provided discounts and they reduce the conversion rate. And I think it's a very sort of delicate thing that in some cases my perception is that discounting can actually put people off because they think, well, what's wrong with it if you're discounting it? It's sort of like it kind of cheapens the product, as it were, and makes people kind of wonder what's wrong with it. We've very analogous but similar. We've run tests where we kind of display things like you can get free and quick returns, and that sometimes doesn't work. And I think people think, well, why would I want to return it? Like, why are you being so
Yeah.
obvious about the returns? So and there's all that kind of goes on. But I don't know. I think one of the challenges is that unless similar businesses got together and agreed to collectively stop discounting, then you're always going to have that thing of, well, if we do it, then fair enough. But then if our competitors are discounting very similar products, then people are going to swing towards those. So it's a tough thing. I mean, like you've got we don't work with DFS, but businesses like that where they are just constantly on discount. Like
Yes.
furniture retailers and things like that. They will permanently have like a 50% discount, and you really think about it. You think that people can't really be fooled by that, and there's got to be better ways of sort of trying to do value reciprocity than that. But at the end of the day, like all their competitors all do it, and so they've all got themselves into a bit of a trap where, like, nobody can really stop doing it. Same with Sky and Virgin Media and all those kind of like things. They have a huge problem with the fact that everybody knows that when your contract comes to an end, you ring up, say you want to cancel, even though you don't, and you will get saved with an offer.
Yep.
And they know full well that that's a hideous way to run a business, and that creates massive operational cost around it and stuff like that. But Virgin Media can't stop doing it because Sky do it, and Sky can't stop doing it because Virgin Media can't do it. So,
And another kind of point around that is that how do you feel about companies putting delivery schedules front and center? Because obviously over the next few months there are going to be challenges with regard to deliveries. Do you think companies will benefit by being more open and honest with regard to deliveries over the next few months?
yeah, I mean, in theory, yeah. I mean, as with all of these things, it's like test it. You've got to test it. But I think businesses miss or underestimate the value of clear information about delivery a lot of the time. Like, especially bigger items and more expensive items and things like that. It's a really, really important thing to understand. How am I going to get it? When am I going to get it? Do I have to be in?
Yeah.
What happens if I'm not in? And everybody's had those situations where that's gone horribly wrong and it's been a nightmare. And so, especially if you live in like a flat or something like that where it can't be left on your doorstep and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think absolutely, like focusing on delivery from the point of view of actually making it a good experience, first of all, but then, making sure people are aware of that and they're aware of what's going to happen before they buy is it's not necessarily going to work, but you test it, and it's a really, really good thing and an important thing to focus on testing, all that sort of stuff. Actually, the same bed retailer that I was talking about, that we've had a huge amount of success by really clarifying how good the delivery process is. So they have a very, very good delivery process where, like, you're booking a slot on a day, or you can book a day for a bit cheaper, but then you will be called. You will get an email a few days before, narrowing down that slot. You will get called the day before, narrowing it down even further, and then the delivery driver themselves will call you about half an hour away to say, this is exactly the time that I'm going to be there. So, to wait to have something like a bed delivered, and also they'll will clarify how many people are going to carry the bed in and all this sort of stuff, and to have that sort of level of clarity over the fact that it's going to be really good is very, very important. And any way we can display it, it increases the conversion rate hugely. That might not be the same if you're buying, a book from somewhere. You might not care.
You don't need two men to deliver it, for sure.
Yeah, and also, like, you probably it's going to fit through your letterbox, so you're not really going to worry about it that much. So it sort of depends on the nature of the product and things, but
the use of things like out of stock, will email you when it comes back into stock, those sorts of messages that are sitting on that. My own experience is I've never been emailed back on anything when it comes back into stock, so I may just be a little unfortunate. But it feels as though that there could be more done in that kind of world, to be able to say, actually, we'll give you an update in 24 hours or 48 hours or something like that. Because I think customer service now is becoming much more valuable as an asset to a business, and hopefully a profitable business, than it was before, because it was very much centered on price, I suppose, in a digital world. And now price is kind of flattened around with, you see the same price for everything. It's now those added extras which is going to make the difference. Do you feel that companies are doing enough to be able to show that added value?
Not generally, I guess. I think really, like, what is required there is a lot more sophisticated CRM, because in that example, in most cases, what's happened is, like, they've got an email capture saying notify me when it's back in stock. But in the back end, what that would probably require is someone manually going, right, this is back in stock, pulling an email list of all the people who wanted it, and then emailing them manually. And they would probably only do that with something really major that they knew, like, had a huge sort of demand to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but you might, you can imagine, although it might be difficult to execute, but you can imagine a much more automated system that is completely sort of understanding the product, checking stock levels, it's back in stock, so it's going to automatically email you and all that sort of stuff. And the same for a lot of other customer service functions. Like, you could automate that with sophisticated CRM. And I think a lot of businesses just are not there with their CRM systems, either from a technical point of view or from the sort of thinking that goes with what it is that CRM should be doing. So that is an interesting area that I think, like, people don't realize how unsophisticated those are. Like, there's so many businesses, you're getting emails from them, so you think they're doing sort of CRM, but then actually, it's just some manual blanket emails and maybe a basket abandonment thing and stuff like that. So, and it's not as complicated. So when people balk at the idea of CRM because of all the really expensive, failed, massive kind of CRM projects that they've read about, and it's not actually that complicated for e-commerce retail, because really it is like sophisticated email marketing that's associated to it, rather than like loads of really complex cross-channel stuff. But also it's incredibly effective, because when somebody comes to a website, you've got them for that specific moment in time. And when they go away, then they go away and forget about it. So if you can sort of extend that relationship through email or through other channels, then it's surely only got to be a good thing. And mostly you'll see that an e-commerce retailer that starts implementing email will quite quickly end up with like 30-40% of their revenue coming directly from emails. Not that that's necessarily all completely incremental revenue, but
Mhm.
still, a lot of that will be incremental. So yeah, I think that's a good thing to focus on for businesses is just getting more sophisticated with that and getting more automated.
So just really swinging back to where we started on this conversation is that I think that if you take it as and this is a huge generalization, but I think overall companies spend millions of pounds on acquisition, yet pay a fraction of that cost around CRO and CRO expertise as well. Do you think the balance is skewed? And what would you anticipate would be a reasonable percentage of marketing spend, to spend on CRO? And I do realise that you're a bit biased in this respect because you do look after CRO.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd struggle to sort of say that there's a blanket answer to that question for every business. You know, and actually part of the problem is that people set these budgets without properly thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think really what's needed is really careful business strategy and business planning that is looking to what is the focus for acquisition, like what are the markets that are out there to be got, and the responsiveness of those markets, and how can you basically pull various different levers in order to increase revenue and profitability to the point, to the earlier point, and what are the best ways to do that, and therefore what are the budgets that we've assigned to each of these different things. Now I don't really think that's done very carefully in many businesses. I'm sure in bigger businesses it is in theory, but yeah, I think like you'd probably find that in a lot of businesses they just go, oh well, you know, we need to drive more traffic. That's where the money comes from. So put 80% to that, and then that CRO thing seems a bit interesting, so we'll put a bit on that. And it's like that really. So it's not really being properly thought about, and I think it's worth businesses thinking about the strategic and planning skills that they have either in the business or from third parties that can help do that, because without that you're sort of like flying blind as it were and just putting money where it feels like it might work best, and doing that more intelligently and fine tuning it has got to be a good thing.
Well, I think the last 18 months has been very interesting with COVID and the effects of COVID. I think the next 9 months are going to be equally as interesting. I won't say good or bad or indifferent, but I think they will be different to what we've experienced of late. And it's been great having another chat. And I would like to be able to leave the door open to get back with you, maybe in a year's time, to be able to see what happened, to see if things have gone the way we anticipate that it's going to go.
Of course, yeah, I'd be more than happy. Yeah,
But for now, Jonny, thank you very much for your time. I do appreciate that you've taken some time out of your very busy day, and I thank you for it. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
great. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on again.
Thanks a lot.